Welcome to A Day in the Life. My name is Thomas Galloway. Today's guest is Eric Snyder. He is with the Ames Police Department and has been serving as the department's Community Resource Officer. We spent time talking about Officer Snyder's background, the political climate surrounding law enforcement, and some of the steps he has initiated to improve the relationships between community members and officers. Officer Snyder's community outreach culminated with a video that went viral last year as part of the department's Donut Disrespect campaign. That video is linked in the description below if you have not seen it and want to. Regarding this podcast as a whole, I have a lot of flexibility with the guests that I have on this podcast. So if there is a particular occupation or discipline that you would like to learn about, please reach out to me and I will try to find a guest that works in that area. If you enjoyed this interview, please subscribe and share with a friend. And if you are interested in law or politics, check out the Galloway Law podcast as well. And now to the interview. So I'd like to start with a bit about your background, starting after high school. If you could just take me a little bit through your education or career path till now.
Yeah. So I came to ISU for aerospace engineering and immediately decided that wasn't something I could do for the rest of my life. I loved being creative. I loved building things. I loved designing things. But in a lot of my classes, nobody talked to each other, and I was a people person. I had to be around people. I like to solve problems, but I didn't realize until that point that I like to solve problems involving people, not problems involving objects necessarily. So I got out of that career path and kind of didn't know what I wanted to do, but had always wanted to play football. I played football in high school, so I walked on to the ISU football team with a couple of friends of mine that were on the team. And that took me down a path of exercise science and strength conditioning. And I started going to school for that, but I decided I didn't want to go to grad school.
Right.
And in order to make a good living and do what I really wanted to do, I needed to go to grad school. So I said, you know what, maybe I'll just be a personal trainer. But one day I was watching Cops on TV, and I thought, that looks like a really cool job.
Right.
And one thing led to another, and now I'm a police officer.
Gotcha. Okay. And was there any point until then growing up that you had thought about law enforcement, or was that like the first time?
Nothing specific, or there was no specific or hard drive towards that.
Right.
That was the same as a lot of kids, firefighter, police officer, something like that is what I wanted to be when I got older, But I had some good people in my life. My dad was a volunteer firefighter, well, still is. He's a fire chief in a small town. So that public service, I guess, was there. And I also had a town cop in the town I grew up in that was friends with our family and would come by our family's business and mess around with my brother and I and handcuff us and goof around with us. So I had a positive image of law enforcement, but no specific interest in the profession. Right.
So what's the process specifically to becoming a police officer?
So generally, it depends on where you go. But generally, there's a testing process. There's an application phase, a testing phase that usually involves physical fitness testing and written testing, and then some kind of an interview. And then once you actually get hired or get a conditional offer for employment, you go through a few more steps, usually medical screenings and polygraph screenings and things like that. And then when you actually get to the point of being hired, then you would go to the academy to get certified and go through field training. So then it's mostly training phases after that.
Right. Throughout the training process and including your time as a police officer now, what has been the most challenging moment or challenging time?
Wow. It's challenging every day because you're dealing with people, and often you're dealing with people at their worst. They're having their worst day they've ever had. They might be a great person, but they're having the worst day they've ever had, and that's what you're dealing with. So I always get asked the question, what is the craziest thing you've ever done, or what's the most exciting call you've ever been on? And it's always hard to say because they're all crazy and exciting or challenging in some way. So it's really hard to pick one specific thing out. I guess the most difficult ones are the ones involving either things that are close to you already. And if you dealt with something similar in your past or in your life or in your family. I remember I have a couple of recovering alcoholics in my family. And I went to a call one night of a domestic disturbance, and it was a husband and wife, and she was an alcoholic, and I could just see the damage it was doing there. So that was like challenging on a personal level, and it was something I definitely wanted to help them fix, but I knew I couldn't do it that night. I could just help them through it that night. So there's those personal challenges in it too that
Right.
kind of add a little extra.
Do you think a lot of people are motivated to get in law enforcement because they've had certain things like that they've interacted with, if they want to be able to help people?
Oh, absolutely. That's one of the most cliche answers, but probably one of the most true
Right.
answers of why did you get into law enforcement? To help people.
Right.
But it's true. I mean, you hear the old joke, oh, I bet you're just a police officer because you got picked on in high school and you want to get revenge. And I think it's the other way around. It's that you saw brokenness or hurt around you and you want to help fix it, or you want to help prevent other people from having to go through that. A lot of the people that we have at our police department, a lot of other people that I know in law enforcement, you get into their background and the way they grew up and what they grew up around, and you'll find some pretty tough stories of things they dealt with. And they made the best of it and want to go on and help other people get through it.
Right. You mentioned having a positive image of police officer as you grew up. Do you think most police officers have grown up in environments like that?
I don't necessarily think so. I think some police officers got into the job because they wanted to be something that they didn't see.
Right.
When I was in college, I had a lot of people around me that had a negative view of law enforcement.
Right.
The pigs are after us, they're out to bust our parties, whatever. And when I decided to get into law enforcement, I still had those same friends. I mean, they were okay
Right.
people. That was just their view of what law enforcement was doing in their college life, So I had kind of this agenda of proving that stereotype wrong.
Right.
I remember early on in my career dealing with a lot of college students because I was, just freshly not a college student when I became a police
Right.
officer. But having them say, man, you're the coolest police officer I've ever dealt with. And it wasn't because I had anything anybody else didn't have.
Right.
It's just that I wanted to prove that wrong, that the cops were out to get them. The cops are here to help you. Yeah, they might be busting your party, but it's to prevent your house being burglarized or somebody being assaulted or sexually assaulted or some other crime. It's not that they just don't like fun. It's that they're trying to keep people safe.
Right. What would you say the most positive or most satisfying moment as a police officer would have been?
Wow, that's tough too. Honestly, the last 3 years of my career have been in community outreach.
Okay.
And I've had so many good stories of good interactions, problem-solving processes that we've gone through. But when I look at what's going on in the world, and I look back to last year, we launched our Don't Disrespect campaign, and the people that are familiar with that know what it is, but ultimately it was a last-ditch effort to get a message out. We were trying to, after the presidential election that divided so many communities,
Right.
we were trying to bring people back together and heal our community to move forward in a positive way. And we just put out this silly video thinking, it'll get a few laughs, we'll give out some shirts, we'll spread a message, and it went viral, and we continue to make videos and do things with that message today. So I think that's one of the most positive, rewarding things that I've been able to be involved in on a little bit grander scale. And mostly I think it kind of sticks home with me because it wasn't expected. It wasn't something we were trying to do. We just wanted to get the message out.
Right.
And then social media just exploded and helped us get it out to a lot more people.
Right. So to the topic of division, last 4 or 5 years, it seems like there's been the political situation regarding police officers and all these situations become more intense, let's put it that way. Do you think that has increased the level of pressure and stress on police officers in their daily jobs?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's getting better.
Right.
Quite honestly, I think we got to the place that we got to because of everybody on both sides, or however you want to say it. Law enforcement was just as much to blame as anybody else. I think law enforcement kind of got lazy, lax, complacent with the community supporting them and being around them, and some of even the micro communities within their community, they weren't reaching out to those people. They weren't getting out of their cars and going to talk to them. They weren't getting to know the kids. They weren't teaching them anything. They were just enforcing laws, and especially we've become more urbanized. A lot of people are moving into cities, and the more that happens and the less that the police officers interact with those specific communities, we were breeding this division for a long time. We just didn't know we were doing it, I believe. So I think law enforcement had a hand in that as well. So when things pretty drastically and quickly turned on law enforcement, things got really ugly for law enforcement. A lot of people started jumping on the bandwagon of police brutality and law enforcement being anti-community and a lot of the things that you heard. Law enforcement was shocked awake and went, whoa, what are we doing? I think some people were upset and said, we've been working at this. We are trying, but you're not helping us. And others went, well, here's where we made our mistakes. Now we got to do something about it.
Right.
So then the process of healing. I think the same thing happened on the other side of it as well. Right. So for a while, I think it made things harder. It made things more dangerous, more difficult. But I think we're coming out of that, and I think everybody's better for it. I think we're realizing that community policing has to be a part of what we do, and it should be part of what we do.
Right.
It's not something we just go do because we have to do it. It should be something we're doing because it's beneficial to everybody involved. And I think it was just kind of a rejuvenation of that.
Right. How do you inspire younger people to want a career in law enforcement?
I think you have to, the same thing that any recruiter really does for any job, show them that there's good things about it, not just the bad, because a lot of people end up talking about the bad things about any given job. Every profession has its bad things. You can think, I want to grow up and be rich and famous someday making movies, and you'll quickly realize if you look at those people, the bad things they have to deal with. Everybody does. So show them the positive sides of it, and then help lead them towards something that fits them. Law enforcement is something that anyone can do if they have the personality for it. You get trained, you learn. It's dealing with people and helping people solve problems, and we have people from all different kinds of backgrounds that are in law enforcement. Right. But it's just not for some people, too. Some people's personalities don't fit well. So a lot of times when I'm working with kids, I'm not necessarily talking them into becoming a police officer. I'm telling them, find something that makes you happy, something that you can enjoy, something that you'll be good at, and strive for that. And who knows, maybe they'll be watching cops someday look like me, and they'll decide they want to do it.
Right. As far as personality goes, what are some good specific traits to being a successful police officer?
I think you have to be able to think quickly and under pressure. Right. That's one of the biggest things I see people that go through our Citizen Police Academy. We put them through some scenarios, some mock scenarios, and I hear people say all the time, I couldn't do this job. Right. But it's because of the stress that they're put under and the quick decision making that they have to do, and then they have to live with that decision. So that's a big one. But we got to have people that are problem solvers. We have people that are engaged. We have to have people that can deal with other people. Right. We do actually have a lot of introverts that work for the police department, but when they come to work, they're suddenly not much of an introvert anymore. Right. And that takes a toll on them. They have to go home and recuperate from that. But any personality type can do this job, but you have to be willing to talk with people and work through problems, be patient with them, understand. Oftentimes when I talk to kids, I'll say, kids call criminals bad guys. That's the common term. And I'm always careful to not use that term, or to at least tell them, we might call them bad guys, but they're not necessarily bad guys. Right. They might be good people that just made a mistake. Right. I think that's a big part of it. Okay.
As far as being able to act under pressure, say you go a certain amount of time where not really interacting with an intense situation on the job, and all of a sudden you have to be ready to handle it quickly and actively right away. How do you stay ready to do that?
Man, that's the job right there. That's most of what we do. We drive around all day long doing next to nothing or mundane things. Right. Doing traffic stops that are, a soccer mom driving her kids somewhere, not a threat to us at all. Right. Taking a parking complaint or a burglary that happened over the weekend. We do that all day long, and then all of a sudden the shots fired call comes out, or the bank robbery, or whatever type of serious call there is, and we have to snap to action. Part of it's just our training and our mindset. When you strap on the body armor and the bat belt and you go and you get in your car, you just know that it could be that day. Right. It could be that day where something really, really crazy and really, really bad happens. Probably not going to be, but it absolutely could be. So you always just kind of have to be ready. And quite honestly, there's been a lot of cops that have died because they've lost that edge. Right. It's one of the things we guard against the most is, you get about 10 to 15 years on and you start to become complacent because you've been to this call. You've done so much mundane police work that, it's probably not really going to happen. And that complacency ends up getting people killed. Right.
So a big point of this podcast is to help college students see what a day-to-day life of a particular occupation looks like. I think a lot of times we spend our time learning what to do in a job, but we don't really know what it actually looks like. So could you take us through a typical day in your job?
Yeah, the cool thing about law enforcement is one of our most common answers to any question is it depends.
Right.
And it really depends on what your role is at the police department. We hire a lot of different people to do a lot of different things. If you are a patrol officer, your job looks one way on a day-to-day basis, and quite often it looks quite different from day to day. If you're a detective, it's different. My role as the community resource officer is different. We have a lot of different people that work in different areas of the community, and they work specifically, like our school resource officer, for example. He's a police officer for the police department, but he's partially employed by the schools, so his role is in the schools, so his job looks different. But in general, we'll go to work and we'll learn about what happened the previous day or the previous shifts in front of us, because we always have to be aware of what's going on, who the players are, and who's been involved in what. Because quite often, if somebody was dealing with a group of people, especially when it comes to drugs or burglaries, burglary rings, things like that, it's the same people that are involved for a while. It's ongoing criminal conduct, and we have to get to the bottom of it. So you got to know what's going on. You have to know who's been doing what and where the other shifts have been, because it's 24-hour service. From there, then you would go out and you would proactively patrol those areas that need attention, or especially when it comes to traffic, those areas that are a high concern for crashes. And you go out and try to enforce the laws, or at least have a deterrent effect on being in the area to slow people down or get them to stop looking at their phones and being distracted, to prevent the crashes where people could get hurt or have property damage. Outside of that, then it's just responding to calls for service. So you might be doing all of those other things, and then you get sent to something that somebody called the non-emergency line for, or called 911 for, and you go to that. And that's where it's exciting, is if it was just get your assignment, go do it all day long, it would be enjoyable and there'd be good things about it. But the thing that makes it different all the time, and the reason I say it depends, is you can pick up the phone and call us to you. You don't have to wait for us to just show up. So we could be sent to any given thing. And then there's a lot of paperwork after that. Unfortunately, there's a lot of documentation that has to be done, and that's a good thing. But we are the first step in the court process. So somebody could be locked up and have their liberty taken away from them for the rest of their life, potentially, and we're the first step in that whole process usually. So we have to make sure we get things right there. So unfortunately, there is a lot of paperwork. But you temper that with all the cool getting to drive fast and all that stuff.
So as far as before you get a call and you're going to the areas that you said need attention, how has technology given you guys better idea of where there are most accidents, most criminal activity, or wherever to spend that time?
Oh, man. Technology is having a huge impact there, and it will continue to. So I'll be honest, law enforcement's usually a little bit behind the curve, because we don't always have the money to be on the front edge of technology. So technology is probably there. We just got to get ready for it, and we got to get it into our budgets and be able to utilize it. But there are crime mapping systems and databases that if you can pour the right information into them, they can tell you where your major criminals, major players are committing crimes, and allow you to be there when that's happening to apprehend them. What's the movie? Is it Minority Report, where it's like predicting crime before they happen?
Tom Cruise,
not to that level. I hope it never gets to that level. But to the point where we're not just taking a shot in the dark, hoping we're in the right place at the right time, which is a lot of times what we're doing. But, I think back to, about the time I started, maybe a little bit before, we were looking at pin maps of, you put a map on the wall and you stick little colored pins in it for where the burglaries are occurring. Well, now we have heat maps that are electronic. It's a PDF that can get sent out to everybody that says, here's where they're happening, here's where they're the hottest, here's where we think a suspect may live, and you can see exactly where all the burglaries are happening in a certain radius from their house. So, we can visualize it and then send our limited resources, because there's only so many of us working at any given time, into the areas where they're more likely to have success catching somebody or deterring somebody. Right,
okay. Could you tell us, for the people who don't know, a little bit about the Donut Disrespect program, or just some of the background behind that?
Yeah, so every year we do what we call the spring campaign, and it's really just an outreach campaign, and it originally started, from my understanding, from problems that they had at Visha a long time ago. And the committees that met after one of the riots said, we can't have this happen. Why did this happen? What's going on? And I think one of the things that came out of that was the relationship between the students and the police department. And did the students believe that the police department was legitimate? Did they want to help the police department, or did they want to fight the police department? What kind of caused that to go wrong? And they said, you guys need to do an annual outreach campaign. So we've partnered with ISU PD every year since then to do some kind of an annual outreach campaign. And we do outreach outside of that quite often anymore anyway. So Anthony Grider with ISU PD and I sometimes kind of joke about, we do this all the time. Why do we gear up really heavily in the spring? But it is a really good time to reach people.
Right.
It's that new beginnings, fresh start. The weather gets warm. People come out, especially when you're in college. I remember what it's like. The weather gets warm again. You've been cooped up inside. And you're like, let's go party. Let's have a good time. So our goal is to connect with students and show them, hey, we're here for you. We're here to serve you. We're here to protect you. We're here to help the community. And save you from yourself sometimes, to be quite honest. There's a few times in college where I did some stuff that I'm lucky that I either didn't get hurt or arrested for doing. Nothing major, but just normal college stuff that you didn't realize was that big of a deal at the time. So we try to make that connection and show them that we're legitimate. We're here to help you. You can count on us. We're not just out to get you. Don't run from us. Run to us, and have your fun, but be safe with it. So anyway, all of that is why we do the spring campaign. But we actually launched a campaign that year that failed for trademark concerns that we thought we had cleared up, and they weren't. So we had to stop the campaign. Done. Gotcha. Your whole idea, your months of planning are done. So we came up with a new idea, and that didn't work. So I'll never forget it. I was standing in my commander's office, and I said, you know what, I guess we'll just do donut disrespect, and we'll hand out donuts. And I went and wrote a script for this video, and Anthony from ISU PD and Derek Chrysler from Ames Channel 12, we were all together to shoot the video, and Anthony had a good idea, and Derek had some good ideas, and we put it all together, and we made a video that we thought was pretty funny, but I was like, okay, well, it just fills the gap. It's nothing major.
Right.
But like I said, social media made it blow up, and people really liked the concept. I don't think it would probably do as well today. I think it was a combination of cops kind of embracing the donut stereotype and laughing about it and making jokes of themselves, people wanting cops to be relatable at the time. And like I said, it was after the 2016 election, and there was so much divide and so much lack of respect. Online, you'd see people calling each other all kinds of things, and just even in person having terrible arguments over really silly stuff. You couldn't have a political debate that was civil anymore. It often devolved to shouting and yelling and name calling. So I think people were just hungry for that message and hungry for a chance to connect with the police department that a lot of people were afraid was going the wrong way. So it hit home.
Right. That's cool. Yeah, and we'll put a link to that video in the description of this.
Sure.
But thank you very much for the time today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
I appreciate it.